You know, the history of language corresponds to the history of human beings. And as human beings have evolved, so apparently has language, up until present times, where it seems that language is being manipulated and mutated to the advantage of a small, and I mean microscopic, portion of the population across the globe because they don't want their feelings hurt. Hi, I'm an intersexual trans person. By that I mean that I am a diverse and complex human being and not marked specifically by my transness, nor is it my most prominent personal characteristic. It doesn't mean that I'm intersexed, oversexed, pansexual, um, non binary, polyamorous, or anything non human. And what I'm about to say is my opinion and mine alone. They don't reflect anybody else. This video is brought to you exclusively by me. And I don't care what you buy, where you buy it, or how you get it. I have no merch to sell, and I take no donations. But you're welcome to subscribe to this channel if you think that you like what I have to say. Now, all of this has to do with gender variance and the modern mutation of what that actually means. Back in my day, 30 years ago, there were three types of gender variants: transsexuals, drag queens, and crossdressers. And now, it seems like everybody who wants to identify as a trans person under that now absolutely humongous trans umbrella wants to bring their own words into it at the expense of other people. And I'm going to start with what I said about myself, transsexual. That wasn't a dirty word that long ago, but unfortunately, some people who identify primarily as non binary don't want anybody to use that word because it might hurt their feelings. So, in their effort to push into the center of the universe and say that you have to recognize my identity, you push me completely out of the realm of gender variance by saying I don't have any relevance because I identify as a transsexual and not as a gender variant, a benignly termed transgender person. I'm not a transgender person. I'm a transsexual. And in this conversation, I'm going to skip the whole argument about transsexual people's place in the greater world. That's not what this is about. This is about some gender variants abusing the language and trying to completely change it. Your identity is fine. You want to identify as non-binary, that's great. If you want to dress up as a guy one day and dress up as a woman the next, that's great. If you want to keep your beard, do it. It doesn't affect me in the least. But when you tell me that it's absolutely critical for you to be recognized for your identity, your gender identity, in all of its not so concrete form, and yet I have one identity. I've had one identity my entire life, and that is as a transsexual. And when you tell me that I can't do that, when you tell me that I'm committing an act of verbal violence by calling myself a transsexual at the expense of absolutely no one else, then you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And I don't know what gives you the right to tell me that I can't identify the way I want. You're not changing the language. You're not restructuring the language. You're demolishing the language. And you're doing it for no other reason than, as I said, you don't want any hurt feelings. Great that you don't want to feel left out. But the other side of the coin is you don't have a right as the absolute minority of the population to tell the absolute majority of the population how to conduct their usage of language. Your identity and my identity, those are all things that are personal. And the problem comes in when you try to push that beyond the bounds of your identity versus my identity, and you take an entire class, half of the population of the planet, and try and change their identity. Okay? Now, I've been a feminist for a long time, long before I transitioned. I was raised to be a feminist, and I remain a feminist. But I don't know where you guys got the idea that you can just stop women from identifying as they have historically, biblically, linguistically. You know, if you're a trans person of any kind, for example, if you're a female to male trans person and you want to give birth, well, I don't know exactly what to call you. Traditionally, I would have said you're the mother. But if you want to identify as a man, then I guess I have to accept that, because I ask people to accept me all the time as a trans person who went from being a male in my younger days to being a trans person now. And I'll get to that in a minute. But the fact is, you're robbing women, born women, of the right to self-identify. And again, you're an absolute minority. You don't have the right to take that away from anybody. It's not your constitutional right in the United States or the UN Charter or anything else to push everybody else aside so that you can feel good about yourself. I'm amazed that you are so trying to delineate the language that you would try and eliminate such terms as birth mother for birthing person and breastfeeder to chest feeder. Okay? If you're not comfortable with those terms, then maybe you shouldn't be indulging in any of this, because none of this comes with the thin skin model. You know, if you're sensitive to everything everybody says, it's like there's a video circulating on the internet about a person who claims to be a transsexual person, a transsexual woman. Okay, I'll come out and say it. And when they get misgendered, they throw an absolute hissy fit. I mean, to the point of creating minor destruction in the convenience store where they were misgendered. What kind of crazy thing is that to do? First of all, if you're that sensitive, don't go out in public. Don't expose yourself to the ridicule that you're anticipating. And don't tell yourself that you have every right to do that because you're educating the public. You're not educating the public. You're becoming the laughingstock of the public. You know, in my life, I go around and I do what I'm going to do. And I do it the way I'm going to do it. I'm not a dress-up queen. I very often don't wear makeup. Because of medical circumstances, I don't have as pleasant a voice as I used to, but it's the voice I have. But in order to be my authentic self, I have to remain true to myself. I have to be the same person that I used to be, because the person that I was got me safely to the shores of where I am. And that's important. Because if you're going to do a whole human being makeover and you're going to try and change the world to go with that, once again, you're wrong. You can't just make everybody over so that they'll accept you. I mean, that's like changing the rules of hopscotch. Well, that's probably a bad example. I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but what I'll tell you is that the point of being a gender variant used to be to assimilate. My goal, when I came out and when I transitioned, was to just go about my life, not make a spectacle of myself, or not make a spectacle in general, or become somebody that I wasn't. And I don't know why you guys think that assuming these absolutely incredible personas is a part of it, because maybe you think that presentation is everything, which reminds me of the old Billy Crystal joke when he was doing Fernando Lamas. You know, it's better to look good than to feel good. Well, that's okay, but it's better to feel good. And the way to feel good about yourself is to not push yourself so far out of bounds of who you were. I mean, I don't know what you're trying to prove. If you're I have to refer to the thing on Dr. Phil that everybody's all up in arms about. The trans or the couple that was on there. One was a female to male. The other one was a non-binary person wearing a very nice, I think it was like light yellow, linen pantsuit with long hair and a very well-groomed beard. They don't get to tell me how I'm allowed to identify, and they don't even get to tell me how I perceive them. If I see somebody with a beard, I don't assume non-binary. I don't even assume transgender. I may assume cross-dresser, and I think that's part of the problem. A lot of the people running around today who are changing gender from day to day, you may call yourself gender fluid, but you're just a part-time practitioner. You're not, when you're a transsexual, when you're somebody like me, you put your entire life on the line. You risk losing your job, your family, your home, your friends, and you could say, well, I have that same problem being a non-binary person. Well, no, that's not exactly true, because you can retreat at any time. You don't necessarily commit yourself. For me, making your declaration that you're a transsexual is almost like a verbal binding contract, because you're now telling everybody that you're not going to be the person you were yesterday or last week. Now, the differences may not be that stark, but the fact is that you're going to do some modifications. And when I say modifications, I don't mean multiple piercings or getting those huge things in your ears. I don't mean getting your eyeballs tattooed or having your teeth filed down. Okay? I'm talking about the things that matter, like the kind of human being you are. And when I say I'm a feminist, that's because I believe in women's rights. I believe in women's rights to choose. I believe in women's right to self-identify. And I believe in women's rights to object to somebody telling them that they can't identify as women. And as I said, I'm not getting into the conversation here about whether women have the right to tell trans people they don't have a right to self-identify. That's an entirely different story, not for today. My bone to pick is with people who actually say to my face that I'm not allowed to call myself a transsexual because I'm committing an act of verbal assault against them, because it hurts my feeling, or it hurts their feelings to hear that I'm a transsexual. You don't like it? Don't hang out with me. It's the same thing with people who don't like me because I'm a transsexual. And I don't mean non-binary people. I mean just the general population of the planet. You don't like me? I'm not going to hang out with you anyway, because I don't hang out with haters. I don't hang out with people who make it their mission to vilify me. I'm self-validating. I decide what my self-worth is. I know what my self-worth is. I also know what my character flaws are. So I have a pretty good sense of self. I think that the problem is that some of these people who come out and make these declarations, they make them and then they start fighting for something that they don't even understand. Because here's one of the dirty secrets of the transgender community. And that is this. And I'm going to use myself as an example. The person I am today is not the person I started as. As far as my transition, I'm not even talking about pre-transition. I'm talking about life is a growth experience, and you change. Every day when you wake up, you change. And what you may think is the most valid thing in life today, tomorrow you may find out that that's not quite exactly so. And you've learned a little bit, or hopefully you've learned a little bit, and you're a little better for it, hopefully. I've gone through probably about 6 or 7 or 8 evolutions in my thinking. Major evolution, not minor ones like, oh my God, how about that? I'm talking about major evolutionary shifts in my thinking and my thought process because of the experiences I've been able to have, because I approached this open-mindedly instead of using using a 8-pound sledge to beat people over the head because you don't agree with them. And here's a perfect example. I've been called a TERF. Now, a TERF is a trans-exclusive radical feminist, a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. And in some ways, I hate to say this as a transsexual person, I agree with some of the things they're angry about. Because some of you people are pushing the limits that you have no right pushing. You know, if you think it's your right to stand in front of people or to proclaim on social media that you have to accept me because I said I'm a woman, is the most bullshit thing that you could say. Well, it's not the most bullshit thing, but it's one of them. I mean, I don't know where you get the chutzpah to make that statement in the first place. You know, women are free-willed and have a right to accept you or reject you because they don't like you as people or because you offend some ideological belief of theirs, one of which may be that they don't take to trans people in any way. Some women don't like me because I'm a transsexual. It's that simple. But you know what? I don't have to hang around with them. I mean, that's kind of self-flagellating to do that. Would I like to explain to them my perspective? Yeah, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to sell myself because that's not my job. I'm going to live my life and I'm going to correct errors if I run across them. And if they're using pseudoscience or faux beliefs, I will correct them. And if they don't like that, then I can't help them. It's not my job to help them. But I'd like to be at peace with people. I don't want to make people angry. But it seems like some non-binary and some transsexual people are just determined to do that. I don't think any trans person should be explaining themselves or being trans to anybody until they've been out and full-time for 3 to 5 years. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're out new, you're a brand new warrior. I made my declaration and God damn it, the world's going to hear me. Well, if you go a year down the road and you're paying any attention at all, you're going to find that you're going to slightly change. And then in a couple of years after that, you're going to look back and you've changed a little more substantially. And by the time you get to 5 years or so, you'll barely recognize the angry, immature person that made those declarations at the very beginning. You know, it's like the Helen Reddy song, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. Well, I think that's a necessity for women, but trans people, you know, this is not a new phenomena, but it's a proliferation now. And it doesn't give you the right to just like shoehorn everybody else out of the equation. You can't change language, tell people that they can't identify that they were born to identify as, and then expect them to just accept you at face value. That's not how it works. And then on top of that, and I didn't want to get into this, but let's talk about presentation for a minute. Okay? I used to be an employer. I've had hundreds of people working for me over the course of my life. And I was the human resources department when I worked. Well, in some of my jobs anyway. And my point is that some of you folks come in thinking you're going to get a job, looking like you're applying to be part of the sideshow at the circus, you know. And I was in customer service. I was in customer service after I transitioned. And I was able to keep my job because I knew who I was, and I knew what my job was, and I knew what my environment was. And if you can't put those together, you can't expect people not to hire you. It's not discrimination. Because going back to the TERF thing, just because I don't agree with everything you have to say as a non-binary person or in your angry early transsexual life, you don't like what I stand for, which is actually wisdom and maturity, then too bad. Too bad. If you want to call me a TERF, call me a TERF. I'd rather be called a TERF than identify with a bunch of stuff that I don't even understand, let alone believe in. Because for me, it's about common sense. It's about assimilation. And if you want to be a spectacle, I don't understand that. I don't understand why anybody wants to stand out so much that everybody's not only tisk-tisking, they're tisk-tisking, they're backing up while they're doing it like you're holding a bomb. So really, this is about decency. You know, if you want to be accepted, there's a give and a take to this. You have to give a little to get a little. And if you just break out of your shell or your egg or you pop out of your cake or whatever you did, you don't have a right to just like wield a set of verbal nunchucks and just beat everybody out of your way or try and beat them into submission. That's not how it works. If you want people to accept you, you have to accept a few things. Not everybody's going to accept you. Some of the people who are going to accept you will do it conditionally. And some of the people who say they accept you unconditionally are going to fall out. That's the way it is. Things change. People change. Life changes. Every day, life changes. It's a different deal. So if you want to be accepted, even by other people in the transgender population, and I say population because I don't necessarily consider us a community. We are not alike, okay? You have a combined sexual orientation and gender identity thing going on. I don't. I know what my words mean. When I was younger, when I first came out, some of my words made a lot more difference than they do now. And I don't feel the same way I do about how other people see me. I would rather them respect me as a human being than say a couple of words just to make me feel better. That's part of my self-validation, getting over that. So if you want to coexist in the world, then I suggest you think about a little bit of assimilation instead of a whole lot of rioting and inciting to riot. Because that's not going to get you anywhere. Certainly not going to get you anywhere with me. And that doesn't make any difference. But here's the trick. It's kind of like the advice I give. The advice I give isn't going to benefit me because my life's already making sense. I'm where I need to be. I made all my mistakes. I've reached a plateau. I've reached a plateau where life is okay for me. Am I happy about everything in my life? Who's happy with everything in their life? Even people who are rich aren't happy with everything in their life. So, suck it up a little, buttercup. And if you want to be a snowflake, don't, and I really mean don't, wonder why you're meeting such resistance. Because that's a self-inflicted wound. If you like what I have to say, feel free to subscribe to this channel. I don't want your money. I don't sell you anything. I am a long-standing transsexual activist, and I'm not done yet.